You know, today is a big anniversary. You might have missed it. It's 12 years ago today that the Howard government was voted out of office. Wasn't that a wise decision? Oh dear, we've had a rocky ride since then, haven't we? And one of the biggest issues then and ever since has been climate change policy. Although he favoured a cautious emissions trading scheme, Howard was defeated partly because he refused to ratify the Kyoto Protocol. Remember, 12 years ago there was a drought as well. Cowardice on climate did Kevin Rudd in. A broken promise on a carbon tax did Julia Gillard in. Axing the carbon tax was one of Tony Abbott's big claims to fame. Trying to do a deal with climate, trying to do a climate change policy deal with Labor did Malcolm Turnbull in. And Scott Morrison scored a miracle win in large part because of Labor's crazy climate plans. But from Greta Thunberg to mega band Coldplay, who say they'll reduce their carbon footprint by not touring anymore, the climate alarmism and virtue signalling shows no sign of abating. Have a look at Prince Charles in New Zealand just the other day.
We have, I'm afraid, reached a defining moment in human history, a tipping point at which we still have the ability to change course, but really only in the next 10 years. So a very small window, after which there may be no going back.
Not bad for a bloke who's got the carbon footprint that's bigger than Coldplay's. Not bad for a bloke who thinks talking to plants is better for them than CO2. The thing is, he's saying we've got 10 years, yet another tipping point. Act now or be doomed in a decade. So what was he saying, let's say, exactly 10 years ago? Well, take a look at this. He was saying we had even less than 10 years to save ourselves. The best projections tell us that we have less than 100 months to alter our behaviour before we risk catastrophic climate change, the Prince said, and the unimaginable horrors that this would bring. Is this a risk really worth taking? Wow, mark it in your diary then. No doubt the Prince, he might be king by then, will make this tipping point speech again a decade from now. That's if we're still around. Now, if that's not bad enough, former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has been doing the rounds saying he would have won the election and defending the climate and energy policies that triggered his demise.
Energy remains an unfinished work, but it is because ideology and idiocy has prevailed over engineering and economics. And the bizarre thing is, it is very much a function of this little bubble that the right wing of the Liberal Party operate in.
Some little bubble that is. That move, those policies, helped win the election for the Coalition, the mainstream Australian federal electorate. That is one big bubble. The Coalition went with the policies that voters preferred, a sensible climate plan against uncosted Labor overreach. Turnbull, yes, I need to declare I once worked for him. Turnbull wanted a bipartisan deal with Labor, a climate policy that Penny Wong, Anthony Albanese and Daniel Andrews could support. No doubt it would have cost a bomb and, as we know, done nothing to improve the climate. Yet he seems to be saying voters got it wrong. He's saying the Coalition got it wrong and voters got it wrong. All the evidence to the contrary. And speaking of evidence, Anthony Albanese doesn't need any of that before marching off on the latest climate alarmist frolic. Today he says he wants a national bushfire summit. You know, a summit to discuss the terrible threat of bushfires that this nation prepares itself for every fire season and has done for hundreds of years with fantastic services like the rural fire brigades. Something has changed, according to the Labor leader.
It is very clear that whilst you can't say that any individual event is just because of climate change, we know that the science has told us that the bushfire seasons would be longer and more intense, just like with other natural disasters.
This is pretty grotesque stuff, isn't it? These are horrible fires that have destroyed homes and taken lives, yet they're being leveraged for climate politics with activists, politicians and former fire chiefs all grandstanding in the ashes of the fires. These fires were brutal and deadly. They remind us of many others that have been even worse and even more damaging. and they make us brace for the rest of the fire season, not to mention every fire season after that, because we know extreme fire conditions happen in Australia every year and always will. To pretend Australia faces a new threat or that our climate policies can do anything about our endemic bushfire risk is as reckless and as silly as public debate can get. Next, they'll be telling us they can have a summit to get rid of rips, freak waves or tides. Mainstream Australians, whether they want to tackle global warming or are dedicated sceptics, simply won't buy silly stunts like this.